Flashy girl from Flushing, the nanny named Fran.
Oh, Mr. Sheffield.
Miss Fine.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Oh, Mr. Sheffield, a podcast about the 90s TV show The Nanny starring Fran Drescher. I am Shandi Pasquale here with
Toria Sheffield.
That's right. And we're your hostesses with the mostesses here to bring you up to speed on season 3, episode 6, Shopaholic.
Yes, the episode where Fran's ex Danny gets engaged, leading her to spiral into shopping addiction.
Yep.
And we have different, we talked about this briefly beforehand. We have very different feelings about this episode.
Yeah, this episode didn't hit for me. I liked some stuff, but ultimately it just didn't. This one didn't land for me. Toria, you liked it more.
I liked it more, and I have a note that says some big stuff happens. We have another Fran, Mr. Sheffield kiss.
We do. That's true.
And so, go on.
Didn't you feel like overall this was I don't know. It was the whole shopaholic thing. I feel like it was one part, I was like, wait, are they doing a very special episode about addiction? But then they kind of didn't, and they just leaned into every type of addiction trope you could have. And it ended up just being, and then I was like, well, are they making fun of like shopping addiction? Because shopping addiction is real, right? And it was like, well, are they making fun of shopping addiction? Are they trying to warn us about shopping addiction? Like, it just felt like the episode didn't, like, I don't know. It didn't hit for me. Maybe I'm a little sensitive to addiction stuff because I've got some family with some addiction issues, but this one just didn't land for me.
I felt like they treated it like a real thing. And I actually think that they took it very seriously. I mean, like when they recognize it as a problem that she has. And yes, there was jokes about it, which like maybe you wouldn't make if you really felt someone had like an alcohol addiction. But they seem to really support her in her seeking help in her recovery.
Yes.
And then the thing that ultimately makes her the thing that gets her past the hump was what really does get you past the hump sometimes in addiction, which is like you're trying to fill a void and you have to fill it somewhere else. But that being said, we start this episode off with Fran applying for a credit card. As we know, she loves her credit cards. And Val comes in and she looks ashen face. And she's in the kitchen. She's like, Fran, I'm so sorry. And Fran's like, did somebody die? Was it somebody famous? And then she starts going, oh, and Val's like, it's Danny. And then Fran goes, Danny Thomas, Danny Kaye, Danny Bonaducci. and then she's like, no, Fran, Danny Imperiali, your ex, he's getting engaged. And then Fran screams, no, God, why? Why not me first? So that's like before the opening credits. And then we cut to the morning breakfast table. And
I did like this. I loved this, which is basically the idea. We find out at the kitchen table that Niles is super up on Fran gossip and loves to dish before Fran comes down for breakfast to the entire Sheffield family.
Yes.
And I just thought this was such a funny, it was such a funny character beat for all of them, like that they're also invested and that Niles is, of course, the gossiping one. It was great. And so he basically tells the kids that like Fran is upset because Danny is marrying Heather Biblow.
No, he doesn't even tell them the Heather Biblow part yet. He just is telling them that, she's getting engaged, that he got engaged.
Right.
Because then Mr. Sheffield comes in and he chastises them for gossiping. Until then he finds out that it's Heather Biblow. And then he goes, oh, the tramp who stole him away from Miss Fine. And then they all get it on the hot goss.
I wish we had asked Peter who Heather Biblow was to them in real life. And why are they so mad at her?
Like if she's a real person.
Like if she's based on like a real thing or a real person, or if like it's just a name of someone they disliked and they were just like, we'll just name the shitty character Heather Biblow.
I mean, it's a very funny name. It's a funny name.
It's a great name.
Oh.
But yeah, it's funny. And then we get a beat where when they find out he's marrying Heather Biblow, Gracie goes, "Oi, I'm plotting from this news," which aligns with what with what we always talk about. With like, it's funny how the ways in which Fran has influenced this whole family, and the Yiddish and the Yiddish reactions, the very Jewish reactions to things, I think is like blanketed across the whole family. They all just like, it's infectious, you know?
Yes. And so then they think Fran's going to come in distraught to breakfast, but she actually comes in like dressed to the nines, easy breezy, like seemingly very cheerful. She's like, you think I actually care about that? Let somebody else comb the tangles out of Danny's back hair. And she's like, seriously, I'm fine. Like, I'm not acting out of the ordinary at all. No sooner does she say that, does Niles go, did somebody order a power drill? And she's like, oh, me. She opens up this case and she goes, ooh, yeah, I'm definitely getting the matching table saw for this baby. And at which point, the very wise little Gracie is like, Fran, like, if you're upset about Danny, buying stuff's not going to make you feel better. And she's like, aw, what a wise little girl. I'll buy you a toy. And so
which gets Gracie like on board.
Yes. She's like, hey, if she's happy, I'm happy.
She's into it. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, but we established though that, Fran is really developing a pattern of buying things or has this addiction to deal with her sadness, which we cut to, as you alluded to in last week's episode, we have this scene that takes us outside of the apartment, out into the real world, and with music that they've clearly paid for. What was the song? I'm forgetting now, but it was like a shopping theme song.
It was, I have this, hold on. It was Shop Around, wasn't it? My mama told me you better shop around.
Yes. Smokey Robinson. Yeah. They're merging from every store on Park Avenue and Fifth Avenue with bags.
And we get
boxes.
some actual on location, like they were actually outside, like shooting in the streets of New York. And I believe the show was filmed in Los Angeles. So this was like a let's go get some stuff in New York shots.
Wow. Yeah. It was. I didn't even think about that, but you're right. And at one point, Fran goes, don't worry, Gracie. We just have one more stop. And then Gracie's like, where? And she goes, New Jersey. So now they're clearly going to go look at all the outlet stores in New Jersey. And they get there and Fran's dragging Gracie around this store. And Gracie's literally like, Fran, I'm worried about you. Every single time you hear Danny's name, you buy something. And she's like, no, I don't. And no sooner does she do that, is she literally just like grabbing scarves off display cases and ripping dresses off of mannequins. And then at one point, she literally sees all these women looking at these Gucci belts on sale. And so she goes, quick, Gracie. And so she falls to the floor, screams she has a shellfish allergy. And then she goes, Gracie, go run and get the belt. And then she's like, the suede.
I like this.
So she's just gone off the deep end. And then in the next scene, we find out so we have Niles and Mr. Sheffield doing hot goss again in the kitchen. And Niles tells Mr. Sheffield that Heather Bibla wanted Val out of the bridal shop. So he literally fired her. And then he also goes, and Val gained back those 5 pounds she lost. Mr. Sheffield goes, I was going to say. And I'm like, wow, these bitches are so petty. Like, Val and Mr. Sheffield together, like, watch out. So Mr. Sheffield, they basically, I think that don't we have that scene here where it's the popsicle scene where, with DC?
So basically Niles is making popsicle. Here's just pulled popsicles out of the freezer, I guess. And Mr. Sheffield comes in to eat one and he's like, oh, don't eat it. So
those will stick to your tongue.
It'll stick to your, it's too cold. Like let them thaw a little bit because it'll stick right to your tongue. And he's like, oh, okay, thank you. And then Cece walks in and she goes, ooh, popsicles. And he goes, ooh, yes, have one.
Yes. So she tries one and it gets stuck to her tongue. And then she can't talk. And he keeps, and as she tries to say, help me, why did you do this to me? All these things. He's translating what she's saying. And he just says, he'll say things like, she says she quit. And then she's like, la, la, la. And he's like, she says she's so uncomfortable. She shouldn't have tried to squeeze into that size 6 dress. And Mr. Sheffield's like, she said that? And he goes, no, but isn't it obvious? It's just so mean.
It's good. And basically the whole, the plot point of the scene is that Niles is still gossiping and we learn that Heather,
there's going to be a Tupperware party.
And that Heather kicked Val out of the bridal shop.
Yes, but the other big thing that will come in later is that Fran is now about to host a Tupperware party in a couple of days, which is like another excuse for people to buy stuff.
Yeah, to spend money.
And so they're like, you know what? I think something's really going on with her. I think she might be a shopaholic. At which point, this is when Mr. Sheffield goes up to Fran's room. The room is just like covered in junk and shopping bags and all this stuff. And he's basically like, Miss Fine, like, I think you have a problem. And she's like, no, I don't. She's like, I'm a social shopper, just once, twice a day, just to take the edge off. And he's like, Miss Fine, like, have people been shopping in your family since, or something like that? Like, do people shop in your family? And she's like, no. I mean, sure, Dad used to get off work, go pick up a few things with the boys. So they're definitely doing the, like, you know, I am confronting you about your alcohol addiction problem, but with shopping. Oh, hold on one sec while I turn this thing off. Oh, there we go. Okay.
Victoria's heart monitor is going off again.
I am on death's door. But so basically, you know, she's like, no, like I don't have a problem. I don't have a problem. At which point she looks at herself in the mirror and she goes, oh my God, you're right. I bought coral lipstick. So she realizes that like she's just buying literally anything and everything.
To fill the void.
Yeah, to fill the void. So we then establish in the next scene that she is going to Shoppers Anonymous meetings because we're at dinner and, you know, Mr. Sheffield says something like, okay, Miss Fine's coming back from her first meeting. Like, don't do anything that's going to, you know, trigger her. But we also have, just side note, Brighton casually panning through a Victoria's Secret catalog at the dinner table.
Yes.
Mr. Sheffield grabs it from him and Niles goes, I'll dispose of this. He then looks at it, shivers, and puts it in his coat pocket. We're back to this.
Back to Horny Niles.
Horny Niles, Horny Brighton.
I mean, to be fair, last episode, Niles was like just trying to sneak a peek at her in her bra. So like Horny Niles never went away.
Yeah, I mean, and hey, Brighton is at that age, but still, it's very shameless to just
Niles is a grown man.
Yes. But so, you know, Fran comes back and she says the meeting went well, but, you know, she has to go through her 12 steps. And she very, very reluctantly reveals that one of the steps is cutting her credit cards. And and she's like, no, they're like my children. She like literally unveils a stack of them. And she goes, this one's the oldest. It's going to be 12 in June.
Which this was a joke that I flagged as like, oh, this beat doesn't really work anymore. Because like the whole joke is that she opens up her wallet and where you would normally have pictures of your family. Because you used to have in the wallet, you'd have like a little thing of clear these like clear plastic sleeves and they would unfurl. And the whole point was you could like load them up with pictures. And so people would open up their wallets and be like, look, this is my family. And they'd drop all the pictures down and be like, there's my wife, there's my son, there's this one, there's that one. And I was like, that joke doesn't work anymore. No one keeps pictures in their wallet anymore.
It's true.
This would only be on your cell phone. So like the whole beat, like the whole setup of like why this joke is funny doesn't really translate because like the whole bit is that she's like, oh, I remember where I got each one, which is what you would say if you were showing someone like actual pictures. Yeah. And she uses like the pictures in her wallet, those spots for credit cards. Anyway, I just thought that was interesting that like it doesn't really translate anymore, you know, because that's like not even an action we do.
That's valid. That's true. I didn't even think of it because the thing is like what I feel like younger viewers might not realize is like I feel like because we lived through these times, I can watch these things. And even though I don't live like that now, I can just be fully immersed in what's happening. Like
it makes sense.
Yeah.
You're like, oh yeah, this is how people behaved. Yeah.
Yes. Like, you know, I don't even think this is what it used to be like. I'm just, you know, it doesn't ring, no alarm bells go off. I like am fully in the context of what's going on. We kind of then further the addiction analogy theme that's happening because that evening Fran is literally shivering with a blanket in the living room, like yelling, like, just let me get one QV, what is it? QV TV fix. Just let me get my fix. And Mr. and like, you know, Niles is holding her down and Fran's like, I've got the receipt. And he holds up a receipt to her nose and she sniffs it. And when he pulls it away, she literally has like ink on her nose, like basically like a Coke addict.
Yeah, and she goes like, oh yeah, that's the stuff.
Good stuff. That's the good stuff. And, you know, Mr. Sheffield offers to like help sit with her through the night to get her through this to ensure she doesn't shop. And she's, you know, he gives her a big hug and she's like, oh no. She's like, I'll be fine. You go off to bed. And he's like, are you sure? And she's like, I'm sure. And he leaves the room and tells Niles that, he offered to sit with her, but, she's fine. And Niles is like, sir, no, like addicts are sneaky. They'll do anything for the next fix. And then they realize that she stole Mr. Sheffield's credit card while hugging.
Yeah, Niles' credit card.
No. In this scene, she steals.
Oh, right. This is Mr. Sheffield's. Right.
So, spoiler for later though. But so Mr. Sheffield realizes his credit card's missing, and then he goes back into the other room, and he literally has to like wrestle it from Fran because she's like barking. She's like growling at him like a dog, and he literally gets it back from her, and then like holds her. She's like, "It's okay." And I wrote, he's super chill considering his employee stole his credit card. Like, he's being very understanding about this. But they end up waking up the next morning on the couch, and like he's holding her, and she's actually literally dreaming about shopping clearly. But he wakes her up and he's like, Miss Fine, wake up. We did it. And she's like, we did? I didn't feel a thing. But you were great, Mr. Sheffield. Because she clearly thinks he meant they had sex. But he means like we got through the night and you didn't shop. But the big test for Fran comes later that day because it's the day of the Tupperware party that she's hosting. And it's like, can she get through this without buying stuff? And we actually don't see the Tupperware party, but we see like after it. Like Niles is in the kitchen cleaning up, and Mr. Sheffield comes in and he's like, what, how did it go? And Niles is like, oh, you would have been so proud of her. She didn't buy anything. And then like who walks in but Heather Biblo, and she's pregnant, and Mr. Sheffield's like, no, and he's like, yes, but she just gave me a big hug and she went straight to her Shoppers Anonymous meeting. And then Mr. Sheffield's like, wait, she gave you a hug? And then they realize that Niles' credit card is gone. And then Mr. Sheffield's like, oh, where do you think she would have gone? And Niles is like, on what you pay me? Probably an outlet store in Jersey. Which is funny and sad. But
So first, why did she invite Heather Biblo to her Tupperware party?
No, I don't think she did. I think Biblo crashed.
But why? Okay, and then, but why? Like, why would Heather Biblo go there?
Because to be a petty bee, she's being a petty bee.
Man, I hate Heather Biblo. And then we see Fran shopping with Niles' credit card.
And, well, she is at a store in Jersey, like a mall, like a nice store, and she's literally like the store girl, the clerk comes up and is like, "Don't you think you've had enough?" And she's like, "Just give me some hoop earrings for the road."
Which, by the way, this was the scene where I went, "Oh shoot, they really flew to New York to get some New York stuff," because she's holding an In-N-Out cup in her hand in this scene, and there is no In-N-Out on the East Coast, so like they definitely were shooting the studio stuff in California. That's how they so easily got their hands on an In-N-Out cup. Mm-hmm. And then I guess I would bet that throughout this season, I bet you we see more shots outside, because you don't go to New York just to shoot that one 10-second
very
thing.
True.
They probably did at the very end of the season let's go to New York and shoot for like a week or two and pick up a bunch of stuff for episodes where we need it. And I bet you anything we'll see more New York exteriors this season based on just that. I mean, just knowing how production works, they would not have flown there just for that. But they would have flown there for like, hey, we can like film like 10 things and like space them out throughout the season and get like, really set them in New York for real.
Yeah.
So I thought it was really interesting though that she's holding an In-N-Out cup.
Hey, it's Kaylee Cuoco for Priceline. Ready to go to your happy place for a happy price? Well, why didn't you say so? Just download the Priceline app right now and save up to 60% on hotels. So whether it's Cousin Kevin's Kazoo Concert in Kansas City, go Kevin, or Becky's Bachelorette Bash in Bermuda, you never have to miss a trip ever again. So download the Priceline app today. Your savings are waiting.
Go to your happy place for a happy price. Go to your happy price, Priceline.
Look, Bumble knows you're exhausted by dating. All the, must not take yourself too seriously, and 6'1" since that matters, and what do I even say other than, hey? Well, that's why they're introducing an all-new Bumble, with exciting features to make compatibility easier, starting the chat better, and dating safer. They've changed, so you don't have to. Download the new Bumble now.
And one of our listeners actually wrote in and clocked that when we get to listeners' comments.
Oh, really?
Too.
Oh, that's funny.
It's interesting. But so, Mr. Sheffield shows up and he sees her in this like heap of shopping bags, and they kind of have this heart to heart where, he's like, Miss Fine, like really, like you can't let Danny upset you like this. I know you miss him. And she's like, no, she's like, it's not about Danny. I don't miss Danny. She's like, it's what this whole thing represents. Like he is starting a life and a family, and life is passing me by. I'm getting older and I don't have any of that. And, Mr. Sheffield's like, he's like, I understand. I get that. But, maybe for now you to just accept, 3 children and a family that loves you. And she's like, that's very kind of you, but like sometimes I'm just afraid like I'm never going to find that person. And he's like, I feel the same way. And they look at each other and they actually share a very, deep kiss, like a passionate kiss. At which point she passes out, but he doesn't notice because he's turned away like right before she does that. And he starts to apologize and he's like, oh, Miss Fine, like I shouldn't have done that. It's just, you look so vulnerable and I'm so sorry I made that mistake. At which point he realizes she's passed out and, he goes to her aid and she wakes up and she literally has no idea how she got to this mall in Jersey. And she's like, oh no, like I must have had one of those like shopping blackouts. She's like, a girl in my group had one of these. She actually woke up under a pile of discounted jeans. And then she said something like they were baggy cut. Can you imagine the humiliation? Like that's someone's low point. It's not just waking up under a pile of clothes they bought, but that they were ugly clothes.
They were like ugly clothes. Yeah.
But so, he realizes that she has no recollection that they kissed. But then the sales clerk comes back and she's like, ma'am, we're closing. Do you want me to bring all this stuff up? And she's about to say yes. And then she's like, you know what? She's like, I actually realized like, I don't feel like I need this anymore. She's like, it's okay. And then she's like, but I do weirdly feel like a cigarette. But she says something where she's basically like, I don't know what happened during my blackout, but whatever it is, it was like just what I needed. So clearly she got the emotional fulfillment that made her feel like she no longer had a void. And it was, obviously Mr. Sheffield and, all that. But so they, that's the end of the episode. It's
this is their 5th kiss, by the way.
I was wondering, I was like, should we keep a tally?
It's their IMDb did it for me. This is their 5th kiss.
Oh, okay. Wow. 5 times.
5 times. You know what they say?
5 times is 5 times.
5 times is 5 times. All right. Well, on that note, let's move to segments. And now, segments.
So, segments.
Yeah, no, I think we should move on to segments.
We can move on to our segments.
And now, segments.
Segments. With Sean and Toria.
Okay, Toria. I didn't have a ton this episode. I was
interesting.
Like I said, I wasn't a fan. I thought that the second half of the episode kind of lost me a little bit. I kind of got taken out of it by the way they were handling all the addiction stuff. It just felt like a little too glib. It felt like a goof. And not that I wanted a very special episode, because I don't think this is the show for that, but I would have rather them just not do it. And then I went on this tangent where I was like, was Shopaholic a thing in the 90s that like just everyone was doing? And I couldn't confirm whether or not that was like a 90s thing where suddenly people were like, I'm a shopaholic. But
well, and are you bothered by it because you're like, oh, a shopping addiction actually does like ruin lives and,
Well, I'm bothered by it by 2 things. Because it's like, it's real. So like, yes, on the one hand, it does actually affect people. And this sort of like makes it seem like it's a big joke, like it's not that big of a deal. And then I was also bothered by it because the whole like withdrawal scenes and everything, it was like, I don't think like withdrawal's not the same for every addiction. And like the idea that shopping addiction is just like, she would be like tweaking out on the couch and need to smell a receipt and stuff. Then it just felt like, oh, so they're just making light of this. Like they don't think this is a real thing. Like it's so, yeah. So for me, it just like didn't tonally just land in the right spot for me.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I can see how maybe being like, oh, this to me makes you're making fun of like real withdrawal from actual drugs or making light of it. Yeah. I don't think that they were making it out to be that Shopaholic is not real, but I I can see someone being like, don't laugh at people who are suffering and struggling. But I was not bothered. But so for my favorite, I mean, I loved the line where Niles claims that Cece says she was very uncomfortable in that dress
and that she wants to quit.
but that when Mr. Sheffield, specifically when he says she said that, like she said shouldn't have squeezed into a size 6, and he goes, no, but isn't it obvious? I just wrote sick as hell burn.
Yes, sick burn.
And
I also like Fran yelling about her shellfish allergy. I thought that was fun. It was a funny bit.
Well, and I did like though when he asked her if shopping runs in the family, and she's like, well, sure, Dad would stop by the store and pick up a few things with the boys. Because like just the visual of like, instead of going to the bar, like you and your boys like picking a few things up. I listed all mine. Like I like Niles's outlet store in New Jersey line based on how much he gets paid. But so with our listeners' comments, we actually had our very devoted listener, Susanna Varghese, write in again. She always gives us like such fun little comments and insights. She, first of all, did notice the In and Out cup.
Susanna, you know that song?
Yeah.
Susanna, I hope you're happy now.
Oh, I thought you were turning Hosanna into Susanna. Like, I feel you, Susanna.
You thought I went after Sweetie Todd?
Yeah, I did.
Feel you, Susanna. Even though you're always shopping, even though you cannot stop. No, I was singing a different song. I'll play both underneath us talking over all of this.
She wrote that, when she goes, Danny Bonaducci is a real person, whereas Reuben Kincaid is a fictional character, which is funny because at the beginning of the show, when Fran is thinking that a famous Danny died, she guesses Danny Bonaducci, the actor from the Partridge Family, and she goes, who would have thought he'd go before Reuben Kincaid, who I think was like the father on the Partridge Family?
I think so, but Partridge Family is beyond me.
Yes, I never actually watched the Partridge Family, but I'm sure I would have if they aired it on Nick at Night.
I feel like it was on somewhere, and I was like, "This one's a pass for me." I only had room for one family, and that was the Brady Bunch.
Interesting.
Only one 70s family.
It's only one. That's true. It's a lot. She also noted that Fran looked great in that black jumpsuit, which she did.
Yeah, she sure did.
She's
a stunning woman, Fran Drescher.
She is. And I just love, I mean, not that I don't love it when any woman does it, but I love when a really gorgeous woman who like could just play gorgeous has no vanity in their performances and their facial expressions and, their jokes. I mean, there was literally a constipation joke at her expense in this episode,
Yeah. Oh, she's game. I mean, she's a very beautiful woman, but she is game to look a fool. Like she does not care. She will look stupid. She will act dumb. She'll make dumb faces. She'll make her hair weird. Like she's not vain at all. It's great. It's great.
And I actually, I did forget. I should have mentioned that. One of my other favorite jokes is earlier in the episode after it's established that Danny's engaged and, the family's like, oh no, Miss Fine's going to be distraught. Fran comes downstairs and sits down to breakfast. And Mr. Sheffield's like, Miss Fine, we all know what you're going through. We get it. Just, it's not good for you though. You have to let it out. And she goes, Niles, you told everyone? She's like, if you're so concerned, I don't see any prunes on the table. She clearly like revealed to Niles that she was constipated and thought he told everyone. But she also, she says, FYI, Heather Biblow's pregnancy has a storyline in the future, but when we actually meet the characters, there is no mention of it, which makes me so excited to meet Heather Biblow.
I'm very excited to meet Heather Biblow.
I'm so excited.
Very excited. And also, I'm okay that they don't mention it. She has a kid. Not everyone. Like, what?
Or maybe they don't mention it. Maybe
she's like, I'm childless.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. Sorry, I meant maybe they do mention it. It's weird. But so those were some nice little. She said some other things about stuff that she liked, but those were ones that I thought were kind of like extra relevant.
She said some stuff that she liked, but we don't care about her thoughts. So
it was all the stuff we liked. It was all the stuff we liked. Yiddish, we got plotzing again when Gracie goes, "Oh, I'm plotzing from the news." We also got a new one, schnook. Because Fran says, if if that schnook Danny can get someone, why can't I find anyone? And a schnook is a gullible or stupid person, sometimes a pitifully meek person too.
Yiddish has a lot of words for dummies.
Yep.
Like there's schnook, there's putz, there's yuts, there's you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's just a lot. It just shows you our people are constantly annoyed by people being dumb.
Lots of insulting words.
If you're even a little, if your intelligence seems even a little bit below ours, we got a word to describe you.
Also, if you notice, like so many loving words for children and just so many mean words for adults.
But
so for nanny trivia, I know that sometimes we do corrections corner instead of trivia, and sometimes we do nanny out in the world. And today is a nanny out in the world, and it's more just an anecdote that I have, which was killing me. Okay, I was like, what are the odds? So, as Sean knows, I work sometimes in office at a place where people get like facials and Botox and things like that. And I will just say a very
so many facials. What?
Nothing.
Don't make it weird. Don't make this weird. Stop it.
I don't know if
you did that.
Only because I'm on guard. I'm on guard for it because so many people make that joke, and it's always dudes. It's never women. Women are always like genuinely interested and excited, and men just go, "Yeah, they do facials there." And I'm like, you know what? Guess what? You're not the first person to make it. But anyway, so I worked there, and someone came in, and it was a very flamboyantly gay man. Just funny and hilarious and full of like life, and kept saying he was there for Botox. And the thing what people may or may not know about Botox is that you usually need like a follow-up appointment after 2 weeks because your facial muscles are sometimes asymmetric and one side can be stronger than the other. So you can kind of start to get like an arched eyebrow that they'll then adjust. And some people will call it like the Spock eye, and they'll be like, I don't want Spock eyebrows. So can you do a little more over here or whatever. This guy kept saying, I just don't want to look like Mr. Sheffield. Okay. He said it like 4 times. He was like, it's stronger here and always here. I don't want to, and I was laughing. And then I looked up pictures of Mr. Sheffield, and Mr. Sheffield he arches an eyebrow a lot. Like he has a very debonair. And if you actually just Google photos of him, it's not that he, has it all the time, but he often will in a very debonair way have sort of that one eyebrow raise. And it was very funny to me that of like all the references in all of the world of pop culture, this guy who was literally probably 32, 33 was using Mr. Sheffield as his reference. So I was thinking like, maybe he's been watching it on HBO a ton.
Yeah.
Maybe he grew up loving The Nanny. But it was killing me.
It's a relevant show. I mean, people love the show.
Yeah, it was killing me. And so I just thought that was like, it was very funny to me. And what a like scenario to have that reference, to reference The Nanny. And so for the Fran and the Cece, also, hey, maybe this is why I was more forgiving of this plotline. I definitely get a rush of something when I shop. Like I definitely maybe related to Fran a little.
I mean, I do too, in the sense that I definitely have used shopping as a way to make myself feel better. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think everybody does that, right? Like I feel like everyone does that. Everyone goes shopping and when they're depressed, and it is a good way to sort of convince yourself that it's not even convincing yourself, right? You just kind of like feel better having done something for yourself.
Like yes. Well, I think, and that's a very forgiving, that's the kind version of it. And I think that's true for a lot of people where you're like, oh, it feels like I took care of myself a little, but I really like, I this is not a joke. I cannot go into a Marshall's and not come out with something. Like it is physically impossible. It's true. It's absolutely true. It's physically impossible. And I do the thing where if something's on sale and I don't really need it, I'm like, well, I'd be an idiot not to buy this. I found out there was a whole clearance bin at bin at Target the other day for makeup, and Kyle literally saw me like, I was there like, we can only go in and out. Like, we don't have much time. Like, and I was the one like putting all this stress on how we don't have much time. At which point I literally pass it, and then I go back and I start like rummaging through it like an animal, like a raccoon in a trash bag. And then I had to buy something.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Okay,
so you really related to this episode.
I did. I did.
I think that's so funny.
I don't know. It's like I see the deal and I can't.
All right.
All right. So that's an episode. I enjoyed it. I understand though why parts of it kind of, didn't sit right. But some very funny lines.
Oh yeah. Great performances throughout too. It was a very, very funny episode of the show. I don't know. It just, some of it, I was just like, all right, I get the joke. The joke is like being an addict sucks. And like, I don't know, but it was fine. And this is 2 in a row that had some really great Niles performances, quite frankly, like really strong Niles stuff. Although nothing will beat Niles vacuuming past the room and then walking back the other way, not vacuuming, just dragging the vacuum cleaner behind him.
Like Lionel with his blanket. Or like the sad Charlie Brown.
I'm just gonna keep laughing about that because it's so funny.
Yep.
But yeah, good episode.
Follow us.
Follow us on the social media at Oh Mr. Chef Pod, and also go leave a review, rate it 5 stars. Really pump the show up so that other people can find it. And we'll see you next week for another episode of Oh Mr. Sheffield.
Goodbye.
Bye.
The Flushing girl from Flushing, the nanny named Fran.
Oh, Mr. Sheffield.
Miss Fine.